All right, and welcome everyone to the very first Main Street Rhode Island virtual roundtable. Um, I have never done we've never done these before, so we appreciate everyone's uh, adventurous spirit joining us here today, and appreciate your flexibility and patience, and also welcome your comments in a survey that I will send to you afterwards. So today's topic of discussion is Healthy Main Streets, discussing our keynote presentation from our Power of Place Summit. The speaker was Gil Penalosa from the organization 880 Cities. And hopefully all of you had a chance to, if you didn't see it in person, to watch the video, or at least take a quick look at what 880 Cities is all about. And that is that if a city works for someone who is 8 and someone who is 80, it will then work for everyone in between. So looking primarily at cities that where people can live healthy and happy lives. So I am Jillian Finkel. I am the Director of Special Projects at Grow Smart Rhode Island. And my main special project for the past 3 years has been pursuing the establishment of a statewide coordinating Main Street program and for the state of Rhode Island. And I think everyone here probably be familiar with Grow Smart, but if you're not, we for 25 years have been a policy, advocacy, and training organization focused on promoting land use and economic development that is socially equitable and also environmentally sustainable. So still good for the economy, but also good for people and the planet. So Main Street, just to give everyone who may not know a very, very brief overview. When I say Main Street, I'm really referring to any kind of commercial district. So that could be an actual Main Street, could be a downtown in a big city or a small town, or even just a neighborhood center. The way Rhode Island developed, we had a lot of mill centers that kind of evolved to be our community gathering places, and also centers of commerce where people would congregate. We think this is a terrific asset here in Rhode Island because we have so many of them. They are unique and beautiful, historic. People feel very strong connections to them as places. I'm just going to get to a couple more images for you here. But we also know that maybe they are not always living up to their potential as far as serving this function as a community gathering place and drivers of our economy. And we also know that across the country, there is other states, in fact, 41 other states have adopted this approach and participated in this national network of Main Street organizations organized by an organization called Main Street America that for 45 years has been systematically trying to activate people to make these places better. So there's work at the local level, then there's work at a state or regional level, and then the national organization. And Grow Smart Rhode Island is hoping to be that statewide level organizer, since we know we have so many people who are already out there working at the local level. And what we want to do is create a network and a hub for all of these people to connect to each other and to the national network, and to be support, to provide technical assistance, to provide leadership and advocacy, and all of the other things that would help everyone at the local level do even more than they're able to do right now. So a basic approach I identified for what they call points that makes a place work as a commercial district. And we think that Rhode Island has been doing a pretty good job focused on the first two, which one being economic vitality, so supporting our small businesses directly. And I know we love our small businesses. They make up the bulk of our economy. We want to do all we can for them. We have been, especially of late, we just heard about the Main Street Streetscape Improvement Program of Commerce, thinking about the physical environment. I feel like, though there's always lots of work to do, I feel like we're paying attention to that. However, the 2 points on the bottom there, the points we haven't yet as a state been putting enough attention into, and that's the organization and promotion. So that's communication and also people, right? And how all this works gets done, and how do we support the people? So that is the missing piece that we are trying to focus on. And today marks our first roundtable program, where we're going to start bringing everyone together and providing some of that organization, some of that support for people. So if anyone wants to learn more, you can go to our website. You can check out the materials from the Main Street Forum that we held last November, also on our website. You can also check out Main Street America's website. They have a lot of great information, resources, and videos. Or you can always call me, because this is my favorite thing to talk about, and be happy to talk about anyone who wants to learn more. So, so as we continue, I will stop sharing my screen. I want to take a moment to say thank you to the Rhode Island Department of Health for supporting today's event, and also to Rhode Island Energy, who has been our founding sponsor of our Main Street initiative. And now I'm going to take a moment to introduce my co-facilitator, the director of the Warren Health Equity Zone, Kristen Reed.
Good afternoon, everybody. So glad to be here to be part of this. And Jillian and I have, in our previous lives, been part of a community, a space that advocated for the importance of play. So, you know, as you learn more about today's session, I'm sure you will see how that is central to this conversation. But glad to be here, and look forward to learning more about everybody.
Great, thanks, Kristen. So, so as you can see, we have a large group today, which is extremely exciting, and I thank you all for being here. So I'll mention again, for those of you that came in a little late, that we are recording the session. Because we're a large group, I'm going to ask everyone, please stay muted unless you're speaking, and to utilize the raise hand feature, and Kristen or I will call on people to unmute and speak. But meanwhile, please make great use of our chat. I think that we can really get conversation going, and I will be sharing everything that happens in the chat, as well as the link to the recording, within a week or so after our event today. So the more that we can put in there, the more sharing that we can do with each other. So please go ahead and make good use of that. So so for our first question, I'm going to use a lot of polls so that we can so we can have as much participation as possible here. Where do there we go. Our first question is going to be an easy one. I'm going to ask everyone just what organization you're representing here today. So, so curious, the type of organization. I will say anyone who would like to put their name and affiliation in the chat as a means of more specific introduction, please go ahead and do that. But just checking, let's see if everyone's entered. We'll end the poll and share the results. We seem to have a lot of nonprofits with us today. Great, some government, some planning, not so many transportation folks, interesting, and not so many health and social services folks. So, all right, that's good to know. We are now going to say our next poll. We want to know where everyone is from. So what part of Rhode Island or outside of Rhode Island are you from? And I mean, are you representing here today? So I know some people live somewhere, work somewhere else, but your primary location for today, we seem to have a lot of people from Providence, a few from the Blackstone Valley, and kind of spread evenly. Again, if anyone wants to share your specific Main Street or neighborhood, please go ahead and do that in the chat. It's good for us to be aware of those places that everyone cares about. So, all right, let's just so everyone can see, like we do have a lot from Providence joining us today, and well represented in Blackstone Valley and some from the East Bay. So, thank you everyone again for coming. All right, our next, so our next little piece, I will turn this off and just remind everybody about Gil's speech. So hopefully everyone still has it in their mind, because we all felt it was so inspiring and easy to let that inspiration fade away. But I will, just as a means of reminder, say that that 880 Cities is interested in helping us create equitable, sustainable, and playful cities where everyone can live healthy and happy lives. And the elements that he discussed that I noticed, and if I forget any, put them in the chat so we can all be reminded, but I've watched the video quite a few times at this point. So he spoke about transportation and mobility quite a bit. Interesting that nobody identified themselves as being from a transportation organization today, but I do think we're all interested in it. So talking primarily about biking, walking, and transit, right? He talked about parks and public space, trees, nature, and a little bit about climate change. He talked about programming, placemaking, a little bit about public art, socialization, playfulness, and children's play opportunities. Touched on housing, which I make sure we bring up because we know it's such an issue here right now, and also the mindset about change from people, including our leaders and all of us. So, so to remind us all about Gil's talk, I want to bring us to his speech and just play the very end.
Everything around the schools. This is the mayor of London who says the children are not being physically active, so he created the London Mile, the Daily Mile. So they had a recess for 15 minutes, they expanded 10 minutes, and every school in London, at that time, they go out and kids run around for a mile. That's the Daily Mile. Yeah. That could be done also anywhere in Rhode Island. Why not? Imagine the schools for the to dance with strangers. In the schools as community centers in every neighborhood, the schools should be the heart of, and the last message is that we gotta change, clearly. I mean, we need to change. I know that change is hard, that's why we don't change, because change, mostly the opposing people show up, so we do need to show up, and doing more of the same is easier. But no, we cannot do more of the same, we gotta be the change. I mean, change, we need to know, is not unanimous. But the public good must prevail over the particular interest, because the cost of doing nothing is not nothing. I mean, all of you, smart Rhode Island, you have an amazing opportunity, but also responsibility, because you are doing the city for the next 200 years. Focus on people, people, people. Focus on the benefits. It's not about bike lanes or parks or community centers. It's about culture and education and happiness and whatever your community cares about, because all of this helps all of that. Everything that I have said is doable. We need to manage the cities radically different. Remember that there is nothing at this time, for whatever reason it happened to us, is the most important decision of our time is how the cities are built. No one said it was going to be easy, but there's not going to be a Martian coming down to say, oh, I will make cities in Rhode Island equitable, sustainable, playful. These things are not technical issues. This is not a financial issue. I said it's a policy with a big P. We need to have an agreement on the what. We need to have an agreement on the urgency. Maybe in the how there might be differences, but we need to have an agreement. When I say P, it's with policy, a big policy. Everybody needs to participate. Everybody needs to be bold. Let's do alliances. This has nothing to do with left or right or politics or Republican or Democrat. And we need to develop that shared vision, and we need to act. We need to act. We need to move from talking to doing, and then we're going to create equitable and sustainable cities in Rhode Island where everyone is going to be able to live healthier and happier. So let's do it. But now, thank you very much.
So I guess I should have included a question here, assuming that everyone thinks we need some change, but I'm hoping that because you're here, that you all think that that's true. But to just to kind of check on it, I thought maybe what we could do is give Rhode Island a grade. So if you were going to, based on everything that Gil talked about that makes places healthy and happy, what kind of grade would you give Rhode Island? Give everyone just a minute to answer. And if you want to clarify, like if you want to say a B+, you can do so in the chat. And also, I would love it if people could share why they picked the grade they did. It looks like everyone's done. So I'm going to share the results, and it looks like we get a C. Looks like we get maybe a C minus. So what's interesting, I kind of think maybe I would agree, if we're talking about all of these different metrics. But I wanted to get, since we're talking about healthy communities, the perspective of a health equity zone. So, so Kristen, can you share
Sure.
what grade you might give Rhode Island and why?
Sure. So I did have C- down ahead of time, and just I realized I neglected to explain, for those of you who don't know, what a health equity zone is. We're a place-based, resident-led initiative. We're a initiative of the Rhode Island Department of Health. There are 14 of us in Rhode Island, and my particular agency our backbone is the East Bay Community Action Program. So we are always thinking about public health, health and wellness, and how can we work on all of these intersections. And so I did think C-. I'd sort of like to think this is like the second quarter grade. And we know that there's more effort and organization, but still it's a little bit all over the place. And that there, we could do better, right? We need to customize our approach to figure out, specifically if we're thinking about our 8-year-olds and our 80-year-olds, how are we making sure that we're designing in a way universally that everybody is being successful. So that was my grade was a C-, which sounds like I was in the average there. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else care to share why they gave the grade they did? Raise your hand. Anyone want to share in the chat your explanation of? Oh, John's raising his hand. Go ahead, John.
I also gave it a rating of C, mainly because we do, I think, a pretty good job of the planning, but we seem to have difficulty in executing and having like the, backing it up and allocating the resources to execute. So we've got great plans, but not so good on execution.
And I see in the chat also that the priorities influenced or that were maybe funded or passed in the General Assembly maybe are not reflective of what's happening on the ground. And so that disconnects maybe why we're not getting as good grade. Annette Bourne, go ahead and share your thoughts.
Hi all, sorry. I also gave us a D, and speaking of those wonderful plans, which, the city I live in has an amazing future land use map dated February of 1992 that has never been implemented. All of the smart growth features, a Park Ave that I would love to live along, given the rendering in that future land use map, villages in our western side of our city in order to, create pockets of smart growth in an otherwise, exurban environment. And, I think John just hit it right on the head. And it isn't just about good plans don't implement. It's about actual pushback and sometimes recidivism toward a backward-looking thing. So sorry for the D, everybody, but I'm a little jaded today. So thanks.
Thanks, Annette. Well, I mean, Gil's presentation certainly touched on that, that lots of cities plan, right? He said they aim, 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 right? Or don't ever fire. So that was part of the reason why we wanted to get together today, was to talk about moving from talking to doing. So any last thoughts before we move on, Kristen?
I just wanted to point in the chat that there is someone talking about, as an 81-year-old, how can they be playing and safely and sharing spaces? And then also somebody who's a parent of a child saying, when my child can walk safely to the pharmacy or to the store, then that's when you get a B or higher. So really thinking to those extremes. Yeah. And I see Scott. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. As Gil points out, if it's good for 8, if it's good for 80, if you would let your child do it, if you would let your parent or grandparent do it, like then that's when you know you've achieved your healthy community.
I see
Bill,
Scott
Collins
and
said?
Bill. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess my tendency is to pediatrician is to go with potential and optimism under almost any circumstances. And I agree with one of the comments in the chat that Rhode Island has huge advantages, that both what geography gives us with water and land and small scale, but also with reasonably robust local and interactive communities, that people that care about each other. It is very frustrating, the political process at times, but we have lots of resources to work with. We just need to be better at building on them.
All right, and Scott, last thought?
It was almost exactly what I was going to say, Bill. Because I do think we have tremendous untapped potential. We've got the bones to not only have a first-class transit system, but to have even more vibrant, dynamic, more walkable main streets, downtowns, and other neighborhoods. So we are poised to do a lot better than whatever we perceive we're currently doing.
And I would say that's one of the reasons why we've landed on Main Street as a focus of our initiative, thinking that one, we have these assets. 2, they're where the locations where everything comes together in terms of economy and climate, transportation, and that this is an existing model that has worked in other places that serves as that connecting threads, right? It gives an organizing feature and a prescription that communities can use to start to move together forward. So so really excited, and hope everyone agrees and and continues to work with us in this. So for the sake of organizing the rest of our conversation, interested, now you'll see this is a 2-part question. So I'm going to let everyone choose your top 2 priorities. So I know everyone would say all of the things Gil talked about, we have to work on all of them. But if I made you pick 2, well, first one and second one, things to start with, things you think should be bubbling up to the top, go ahead and answer your first choice and then your second choice. So you'll see it's 2 questions. I'll give you just a moment to answer that. I'm seeing 13, 14, 15, 17. We've got 31 people, so we'll make sure we get the bulk of everyone giving us their priorities to help with the conversation. 23, 24. All right, everyone, I'm gonna go ahead and quick end the poll now. Okay, so you can also feel free to explain in the chat why you picked what you did. We'll just look down our list. It looks like pedestrian safety bubbled up to the top of our top priority, as well as transit, a little bit on housing, well, same as transit on housing, it looks. And then for our second priority, transit also, pedestrian, housing, see capacity building for local leaders on there. Great. Parks, nature, and green space. Would love to hear everyone's reasoning for why you might have picked what you picked. And to get us started, I'm going to ask Kristen to share what she chose and why.
Sure. So my first priority was around climate resilience. So town of Warren is really looking hard at what we're going to do in our currently flood prone areas, and as sea level rise and tidal surge combine to create areas where we're not able to get to work, or houses need to be relocated and new stock needs to be built. So climate resilience, I think we really need to focus on more green infrastructure. And so this is sort of a long-term first priority. And I think it leads to play. I think it leads to making sure that our 80-year-olds are not in heat islands and so on and so forth. So that was my first. So I think it touches on some other points. And then my second one is transit. And we just really need to have routes that are going where people live who don't have cars. We need to move it or expand it. And that's going to make it so that people are more playful, more vibrant, more connected. So those are my two priorities.
Thank you. All right, John Flaherty, what did you choose?
I was just giving a thumbs up to Kristen.
Okay. Does anybody else want to choose or share what where they think we should start? Maybe that's a different way of framing the question. If we had to pick one or two issues to focus on to start, Jessica, David.
Yeah, I voted other and I put my note in the chat, but one of the things that I'm thinking about is how hard it is to tackle this work because all of these elements are so interconnected. And I think part of our challenge is when we divide, it doesn't always, it can be hard to knit back together and we end up sometimes competing with ourselves for resources and attention. And the reality is it takes all of these pieces in order to really move the vision forward. So part of me wonders if our focus should be on how to take the whole and move it forward, as opposed to thinking about dividing it into different elements. Just a random thought.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Kristen, do you see any hands?
No, just some more in the chat. Barry's raised his hand. Yeah.
Barry Stiller. Yeah. Go ahead and share.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment about, I picked housing, even though I'm a big transit advocate, because I think that's so crucial in so many ways, because first of all, we need more. And if people don't find affordable housing, we'll lose them. They'll move out of state, or businesses won't move in, or businesses will move out if we can't afford to live here. And I just want to also say, I think we need to address what I think of as two main reasons why we're not making better progress, or only a C. One of them is about housing, that because everywhere you go, there's resistance to density. My town, North Providence, anyone suggests multifamily housing, immediately everybody is against it. And same thing, even in Providence, if there's a large apartment house, people object. So that because we need housing, it's built in the least desirable, in the environmentally least desirable area where there's very few neighbors to object, where land is cheaper, and so we get the sprawl. And that doesn't support the main streets or the transit system. And the other thing that we need to address, that's a difficult thing, I'm only raising it, don't know the answer, is because most people drive and expect to park near the door, the politicians inherently are going to pander to that. So most of the new federal transportation money is invested in highway expansion to pander to that. And very little is invested in transit. And that's part of the democratic process because most people drive. So politicians are reflecting that. We need to, if we want a different result, we need to, I believe, think about how to address those two things. Thank you all.
Thanks, Barry. All right, we'll let Annette speak, and then I want to move on because the next questions start getting into what our barriers are to change, and then we can talk about how to address those, or at least to brainstorm some thoughts about it. So Annette, go ahead.
Great, thank you. And I don't want to take long, and I really appreciate Barry's remarks. For me, housing, obviously, it's quality of life. If you don't have a place to live, it's hard to have any sort of outcome in life that's positive. But I think in a deeper way, having a conversation about housing is really about how we all live together in community and as a state and within our municipalities. I know it is a discussion that everyone wants to run away from. I sit endlessly in conversations where people are happy to talk about, how safe it is to walk on the sidewalks as they are. But once you really start to talk about whether, the houses can have ADUs or there should be multifamily by right, the opinions vary greatly, and it's really a shame. But I do think it is key to our national heritage and culture in how we move forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Annette. So this next question might be easy then for everyone to answer. So what are, you can choose more than one on this one. So what are our primary barriers to change in Rhode Island? And this is what I'm thinking of is our writ large or big picture barriers. So so everyone go ahead and you may choose more than one for this question. So we know what our problems are, right? So we know where we have to put our energy into solving our problems. First, let's identify the problem. So I've only got 15 so far. Come on, everyone, and make your choice. 19, 20, 21. And it looks like leadership and political will is leading with almost everyone choosing it. So I also, let's see, find it interesting. I will share the results with you now. So leadership and political will, and funding being the second choice. And I will point out that Gil Penalosa spent quite a bit of his talk giving us examples of how it's not necessarily a funding issue. That when COVID happened, change occurred, in a couple of weeks, and that if the political will is there, that maybe his position was that the funding was not the biggest barrier. So we also have, let's see, 10 people talking about the mindset of the general public. Everyone, please go ahead and elaborate on your choice in the chat. And I'm going to ask Kristen to kind of kick us off and let us know what she chose and why from a public health.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of systemically, I'm thinking locally and statewide, but we do see, so I guess it's mindset to fall under there, but really the idea of connectedness, of social connectedness, somehow we need to have more connections on our street, in our neighborhood, to our town, to our municipality, so that we can be more resilient, so that we do have perspective that includes more. And so to me, really, it is a mindset, and it comes down to social connectedness equals social resilience. And so don't have a magic bullet for a magic, idea for how that happens, but lots of hard work. Yeah.
Yeah, when I started thinking about Main Street really seriously during COVID, when it did feel like that that recognition of need for other people became very profound, and recognizing that people over, you know, hundreds of years gathered in physical locations. And where are those physical locations over throughout history? They were at the centers of commerce, or the centers of civic activity. And so Main Streets really seemed to be the not only, but a major place that if we were going to put our energy into a place that could bring people together, that would be where to start. So
Yeah.
before we open it up further, I want to also ask about the barriers at the individual level, and then we can kind of talk broadly about that, about both questions, because I do also think there are elements of this that are reflected kind of in the macro level, but also at the individual level. Like Gil talked a lot about people need to participate, people need to become doers, we need to invest in our local leaders. So so what does it take to and I'll launch the poll right now, what's the most important factor like for an individual to become more involved? You know, so I saw Dwayne Keys join our meeting earlier. I know he's thought a lot about this. So so yeah, everyone take a minute and say, like, what do you think at the individual level makes an impact? Because these problems are so big. We need more people doing, right, as Gil said. So what you know, what could we do to help people at the local level like maximize their contribution, maximize their ability to contribute? Let's see, I've got 14 answers so far. Strong local organizations is emerging. 10 of you have chosen that so far. Seems to be the all right, I'm going to stop and share the results, because that seems to be the biggest single answer as we look at that. Communication of opportunities got 3 votes, education and training 2 votes, but mostly strong local organizations. Well, that makes me think Main Street's on the right track supporting our local place-based organizations. So so does anybody want to elaborate on their thoughts on this, barriers at the big level and at the micro level? And then I want to jump into some solutions and some examples of things that have been working well. So Bill, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, I'm, this is extempore and a little less than fully formed, but there's been quite a lot of worry, at least at the academic level, of about the loss of traditional, local, robust community organizations and communications, whether it's churches or PTAs or whatever. I'm impressed, though, just observing kids I know, including my own kids raising theirs, that there are some very robust, often electronically facilitated communication networks happening. The sort of parent chat groups in their neighborhoods seem to serve many functions beyond, you know, finding somebody with an extra stroller, that they do talk about things that matter right there. And perhaps we should spend some time thinking about tapping into some of those more modern local community connections that seem to be pretty organic these days.
Yeah, Kristen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your work in the heads, what have you seen?
Well, and just to follow up with what Bill was saying, I mean, I think, you know, some of these spaces like dog parks and schools and churches, which are seeing fewer people, but pubs and so on forth. I mean, we do have spaces within, and of course, as Bill mentions, these systems that are popping up because of the aids of technology are definitely connectedness. Jillian, are you asking me what I've seen that's working, or that I've seen that's just a barrier?
Both.
Yes. Well, I just hear from folks how much they're dealing with, how much on just an individual level to add like sort of one more thing to a really full tray is hard. Certainly folks who are dealing with the impact of poverty, don't have really the time, but need so much to rely. And we're putting a lot of you figure it out, you build the systems. And so as a community, if we could be resilient on behalf of our community members, that's what I think would be amazing. But
yeah, let's jump right into this question of what we can do about it,
Yeah.
right? So what are things that we've been seeing that have been working well to address either some of these issues at the individual level or writ large, or you could say, what do we need to do? Where do you think we should start? So so I know I have thoughts. Kristen, do you want to share? Do you have a specific example of something?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah. So happening in Warren, I think we're a very small town, 11,000 people. We have just a single person in our planner's office. I think the community engagement that has come from a strong organization such as the Health Equity Zone, which I hope remains strong, is allowing for us to do some residents are now knocking on the doors of folks being impacted by flooding and inviting them to a platform. And so that municipal connection to our work group, I think, is working really well. Now, we are a teeny tiny place, but we are finding that reliance on each other is being really beneficial. Yeah.
Does anyone else have, can you point to examples that may even be from outside Rhode Island where you've seen or heard about something working really well to address either one of these issues specifically, or maybe it's how a place that has been doing a good job growing its local leaders. I don't see any hands. Feel free to share in the chat also. Oh, Bob Ruley. All right, Bob.
I broke my promise. I just want to build on what Kristen was saying about Warren. I'm the former planner or director of planning community development in Warren. 3 years ago, we started Market to Metacom because we identified sea level rise and climate change to be impactful to a pretty large section of Warren that is low moderate income census tract. So I'm really heartened to hear that Kristen and the heads are kind of running with that now, because when the Providence Journal first did a story above the fold on a Sunday and a Columbus Day on what we were doing in Warren, by Tuesday I had people with pitchforks and torches at my office, threatening that I was ruining their lives and their property values because we were talking about something that was a real threat. And the other part of our Market to Metacom was identifying the need to create housing for people that were going to be displaced, people that were important to the community. Again, these people were low, moderate income, and then tying that into transportation. So going back to some comments earlier, as somebody that works in government and is outspoken about how dysfunctional government is, government tends to look at things in straight lines, and that's why we don't get anything really done. There's an interconnection between all of these elements that we're talking about: Main Street, pedestrian improvements, transportation. when you look at all those things together, it makes, I always say that individually they're one tile. If you look at them collectively, it's a whole different mosaic. That's, how we need to, as a society, start to move forward to look at the interrelationship of all of these things. So, I mean, kudos to Warren for kind of stepping up after 3 years and finally recognizing that sea level rise and climate change is a real thing. I don't think without Kristen there, that would have happened. I think it speaks to, the different roles that can play in a community. But I just wanted to share that and break my promise that I wasn't going to talk.
Thanks, Bob. So since not everyone, but since so many of you said strong local organizations would be a factor in growing local leaders, what are some things you think could help our local organizations be stronger? Keep breaking your promise, Bob. I know we have our wonderful health equity zone networks. We know they need to be funded. Kristen, anything else that could help the health equity zones be more effective?
Well, I think, the health equity zones really are a collaborative. So it's who the stakeholders are, who's at the table, who's joining in the work that we're doing. I think really it's around this collective impact, which for my little town in Warren, being aware that housing and climate and food insecurity and education, it all is coming together, and how do these things work? So I think, joining the conversations, joining in either guiding or in topical areas is wonderful. And whenever possible, reaching out to the health equity zone that may be operating in your municipality seems really important. Yeah, I think this comment about public good prevailing over the particular interest, this challenge of being able to talk to each other and to take, to maybe not all agree, but he talks earlier on about agreement on the what, right? Maybe the how is harder, but the agreement on the what. I think that's what we're all working towards on these local level and then the state level, but it's a little bit of a ramble.
Well, his first suggestion was have shared vision, right? So, and then who leads that? Who creates that shared vision, right? Scott Wolf.
I'll be real quick. I think we need to help people who want to make change in their community understand that it's possible to do it and how to do it. Demystify like the local government decision-making process, which can be arcane and daunting to people who aren't familiar with it.
Yeah, Bill says in the chat, it's a challenge to bring out and cheer for the positive voices in these times. Cave dwellers are pretty loud at town meetings and on modern media forums. It feels to me this group can help shift toward a more positive mood. I agree. And
yeah. And just I think we have a serious breakdown, right? People are not running for office locally because it is so difficult. How do we get people to run, and how do we build people and then build some safety around it, I guess. Yeah.
Just a real quick shout out to a new group called Neighbors Welcome, which is trying to build a core of YIMBYs, yes in my backyard, to counter the omniscient, or not omniscient, the omnipresent group of NIMBYs. We need as many people showing up at hearings to support complete streets and to support multifamily housing development as will always come out to oppose those things.
Yeah, I have a question. I have two questions. My first question, please feel free to throw your answer in the chat or raise your hand. One is, how have any of you been successfully communicating with people? We have, I know our local newspapers, right, are not as widely distributed as they used to be. For a while, I felt like we had consolidated social media that we could know we were reaching a critical mass of people through each platform. Now it feels that has fractured as well. Is anyone having success on certain technological vehicles for reaching folks? I know we're all overwhelmed with email. Any thoughts about communication? Old-fashioned message boards, right, in coffee shops. Bob?
Yeah, okay, I'll break it again. I'll just use the experience that we just had in Massachusetts on getting MBTA communities legislation passed. And we wrapped that into a larger economic revitalization effort, but we did direct mail pieces. We had community workshops. We have e-blast. We have a dedicated website. And, I would say that if we got 25% of the population of Bridgewater to even understand what we're doing, that would probably be ambitious. I mean, I like to say people don't know what they don't know. So, getting people educated is difficult. As Kristen said, people that volunteer on councils, boards, and commissions, they're just that. They're volunteers. If they get paid anything, it's not worth the aggravation that they suffer. But at the same time, my experience is if you're going to volunteer for the board, you probably should put some time in to understand what your responsibilities are. And I think oftentimes that doesn't necessarily happen. But, in this environment now, you've got 2 adults working, you've got kids in dance class, sports. I mean, the last thing they want to be doing is punishing themselves going to a town meeting, unless they don't have cable, because it would be entertainment. So, I think the communication piece is, I don't know that, I wish there was an answer as to how we solve that. Because I think that is the most difficult piece, is educating people and communicating with them, because there's a lot of bad information out there that seems to grow exponentially. And, I spent a lot of time just walking people off the ledge. It's like, nope, that is not what they said. That is not what I said. But people hear things the way they want to hear it. And, we just have to look at things nationally to understand how that works.
Yeah.
That's all.
I will reiterate that communication is one of the 4 points of making a Main Street work, and that the best practice as far as Main Street America has found over its 45 years is that that if it is someone's paid job to do these things, that it ends up being more consistent and effective. So, Bob, what you were referencing was an effort of a town in which it was at least run by someone whose job it was to communicate about this. So,
Jillian, I just saw Josh Daly raise his hand.
Josh Daly, go for it.
Thanks. I wanted to piggyback yet again over on something that Jessica was saying in the chat. The participatory budgeting efforts in Rhode Island, and then also that as a model elsewhere. Another fun book recommendation, Making Democracy Fun, by Josh Lerner. So he took a lot of learning from participatory budgeting around the world, but then also thinking about like exactly what you're talking about. Like I've been on, town boards and commissions, and it's arcane. It's not meant for like this sort of engagement by the public in a way that they can do in a way that makes sense to them, right? But he looks at really interesting ways, and he actually like draws from game design for how to make it more engaging as well, which I thought was really very, very interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, Annette, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I wrote down the name of that book, and the remark just reminded me I had the opportunity to talk at one of the HES learning communities on municipal engagement, and I had to remind the audience that, you know, many of our public processes are, you know, derived from 17th century English law practice, right? I mean, even the words, docket and things like that. So I did make a tongue-in-cheek remark that, you know, when you have the opportunity every once in a while to watch, you know, British Parliament or Canadian law, and they come in with the wigs, right? And we all think that's kind of funny. But the fact is, it is a physical reminder of where this comes from. I think a problem here is that, you know, we are dressed in this, you know, supposed 21st century American kind of, you know, informal friendliness, but the process is not that, right? And so I have recommended sometimes that we buddy up with people. I've often told people to go to YouTube and watch proceedings before they attend so that they can, you know, be better acquainted with what the process will be. But I mean, I'm for overhauling the whole process, but I know that's not going to go anywhere right now. But I think that the words and the whole decorum is really very off-putting to most people. I mean, even you know, just, you know, not newcomers to our country, right? I mean, a lot of people don't participate because they say they don't even know what's going on. So.
Yeah, thanks, Annette. I see Josh continued in the chat talking about play and games, and certainly that was something that playfulness was right at the top of what Gil Penalosa was talking about. It's certainly near and dear to my heart. I know it's near and dear to Kristen's heart, and that that it is human to want to have fun, and for children, right, it's how they learn. So certainly I mean, I noticed that we didn't as a group highlight those topics in our list of priorities. I wonder if we should talk more about that in a future session, because certainly seems like so like an area that maybe could be explored to kind of impact some of these other things that come to mind first. So with our last couple of minutes, I have one more poll for all of you, and that is really it's a little self-serving, but we want to know, what role do you think, or would you like to see Grow Smart Rhode Island play in all of this moving forward? So, you know, traditionally we've looked at policy, we convene folks, we consider ourselves to be thought leaders. I think this one can only choose one thing. So if you had to choose our primary role,
it says multiple choice, Jillian.
Oh, does it? Oh, all right. I'm not sure if you can choose.
You guys are going to be doing a lot. Let's just say that.
All right. Well, everyone go ahead and let us know what you think should be our role moving all of this forward. I will also let you know again that this roundtable represents the first in what's going to become a monthly or approximately monthly program, at least to start. And so our next one is actually scheduled for August 1st. The topic moving forward, it may be a slightly different format where we'll have a presentation and then discussion. So we're looking at discussing street trees. It was something that Gil Penalosa talked a lot about, something I know the HES Network and Department of Health are thinking a lot about. Certainly it has climate implications and many other things. So I will end this poll and share the results with all of you. So you can see what you said, but there will be a survey sent out to you sometime soon, within a week, that will ask you to reflect a little bit more on what topics should we be talking about in these sessions. What else would you like to see from Grow Smart Rhode Island and our Main Street initiative, as we think about our main streets and our commercial districts as our centers that can bring us together and really move some of these topics forward. So so that is 1 o'clock. We were ending on time. I will stay on if anyone wants to chat, ask questions. As you can find us, our email addresses are on the Grow Smart Rhode Island website. Thank you again all so much for coming. Look forward to much more conversation in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jillian. I guess if you need me, find me, okay? This
All right,
seems
actually,
great. Yeah,
that was fun. All right,
congrats.
I'm going to stop the recording, actually. Stop.